and really excited to kick this off today. Since they're running late, I'm just getting started, so hopefully they'll get here before I'm done talking. But we're really excited to welcome Mary Grove here today from Google for Entrepreneurs. Anyone who has been around anything in Austin knows that Google's one of the biggest supporters of entrepreneurship and many other things in our community here in Austin. And I in particular, we have a lot of great partners that we work with, but one of the things that I really love about working with Google is the way that they engage with the community is really from a community first perspective of they kind of come in and say, how can we help, what can we help support, rather than here's what we want you to all go do. And as a result, you'll see their mark over so many great things happening here in Austin. But in particular, you see it here in Austin at Capital Factory because we are a Google Tech Hub. We're one of, I think, how many Google Tech Hubs are there now in North America now? Is it 11? 12? 11. 11 Google Tech Hubs in North America. We were the 9th. And so in all these other major cities, except for Silicon Valley, because they don't need it, they have it. But in all these other great cities where Google's identified up-and-coming tech hubs and leaders that they can help support to help grow the communities all over the world. And so there's 11 in North America, and then there's other Google campuses in Madrid and Berlin and lots of other places as well. And so Google is one of our biggest partners. That's actually their slogan on the wall there that I love. Always work hard on something uncomfortably exciting. And they support a lot of different programs here. We have an entrepreneur in residence program focused on diversity. So Marcus Kuna is our current entrepreneur in residence that is a partnership with Capital Factory and Google and Code 2040 to help promote diversity. They obviously, many of you know, we have Google Fiber here in Austin, thanks to Google. We have Google autonomous cars driving around on the roads. And so this really is a Google town in addition to the big Google office of people that work here. And so Mary is the director of Google for Entrepreneurs. That's a whole division within Google just focused on supporting entrepreneurs all over the world. They aren't reporting to one business unit. Their job's not to sell cloud subscriptions or get people to use Gmail or anything like that. It's really to help support all these things around the community, of which we're so fortunate to benefit from. And she has a pretty awesome job. She gets to travel around the world meeting with all these great entrepreneurs and helping to figure out how to make them all connect together and work together. So we're really excited to have her here with us today. And interviewing her is going to be Melly Price. You already got to see our brief intro from Sophie. You guys missed that part. Melly has been involved with Capital Factory since day one. She's probably, I think, we went looking at the email one day, and I'm pretty sure she's the first person I ever talked to Capital Factory about. If not, maybe her or Ryan Manel. But right at the very beginning, and she was immediately one of the first mentors, one of the first investors. She helped us open up this space. And she's then helped us to create the fund that we now invest out of, and she's really helped lead that for the past few years. And then most recently, Melly took over a really important role helping to run technology and innovation integration for the Dell Medical School, one of the other most exciting things happening here in Austin right now. And so without any further ado, invite Melly and Mary up here, and we'll hear from both of them. So thank you both for coming.
So sorry we missed that introduction.
Yes, thank you. Are we on here?
You should be on.
Are we on? Can you guys hear me? No.
No. Push the bottom button. Is that better? Full turn screen. Like that. Try one more time.
There we go.
All
Great.
right.
Thank you. Sophie, thank you for the introduction. It is such a treat to be sitting here with Mary. I got to meet Mary probably 3 or 4 years ago when Capital Factory joined the Google for Entrepreneurs Tech Hub, and they host an amazing program every September called Trailblazers. And I got to meet Mary and her team at the time, which was smaller than it is now, and hear and learn all the wonderful things they're doing. So it really is an honor to be here interviewing her, and for you to be on my home turf. I love it.
Thank you, Melly. Thank you so much for having me, and to Josh and the whole team for hosting, and thank you all for coming out tonight. It's really an honor to be here with you.
Great. Okay, somebody help me keep track of time because I did not bring my phone on stage. Somebody will gesticulate wildly if I'm prowling on. Okay, so this woman is amazing. Those of you that don't know her, this is a real treat to get to sit down with her side by side. She's been involved with Google since the very early days. I would love to hear about your journey at Google. and maybe a little extrapolation about the fact that I think a lot of people don't really understand what Google is and where it fits with Alphabet and Google Ventures and Google Cloud and all of the things. Can you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. So I was fortunate to join Google in 2004, so a bit over 12 years ago. And the company at the time was about 3 buildings in Silicon Valley. We were 2,000 people globally. As a benchmark, today we are over 60,000 people around the world. So a lot of exponential growth in a short period of time. It's been an incredible journey. But I joined in 2004, right when the company was going public. So I actually joined to work on the IPO team and spent a lot of time with our founders, with our executive team, and really, truly fell in love with the mission of the company, right, which is to organize all the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. And if you think about that broad mission, which was set in 1999, there's almost nothing that doesn't actually fall somewhere in that realm of access, of relevance, of organizing. And so decided to stay for a long time. And so I spent the next almost 7 years in a team called New Business Development, which was early stage product tech partnerships, basically anything non-product and engineering at the time. Went to license technology or content to launch a product, the first distribution deals. I spent a lot of time in emerging markets looking at how Google could enter these new markets from an access perspective, getting more content online. And ultimately, the theme we saw was there was a massive opportunity around entrepreneurship. And so working with local students, developers, universities, that ecosystem that would build the next generation of companies. So 5 years ago, I moved back to the headquarters. I've been away for 6 years in New York and Europe. And our executive team said, we care so much about entrepreneurship. It's such a part of Google's DNA. We were born in a garage ourselves and have gone through that journey. We want to be a platform. So why don't we get organized around entrepreneurship? And that's sort of what led to Google for Entrepreneurs.
So basically, the founders of Google said, hey, we should do things for entrepreneurs. Do you want to do it? And you said yes.
The beauty of the history
Is that like the most amazing job in the world?
I feel extraordinarily privileged every day to work on something that we are all collectively so passionate about with resources. And I think the beauty of the history was it's a bottoms-up and a top-down effort, meaning organically so many teams at Google had done nascent work to support communities in their own way. And then we had senior leadership lean in and say, this is something that Google proactively really wants to do. And so the mission of Google for Entrepreneurs is really to connect startup communities with each other and resources so that together we hopefully can tackle the world's biggest problems and challenges. And I think the communities part I would emphasize, it's partners like Capital Factory, it's communities like Austin, where we think will have the most long-term sustained impact. And so there's part that Google can do directly, but really empowering at the community level is extraordinary.
So one of the things I love is that when I met you all, my preconceived notion was, it's Google. What Google wants, Google gets. And I found out you were a very small team. I think when I first met you, you were maybe 10, sub 10?
Definitely small.
Yeah, you were a small group. And so can you share a little bit about who in the launch of what is essentially a startup with inside Google, who were your role models and your mentors? That's such a critical piece of what you all now offer out to the world, and I know that's part of your journey. I'd love to hear what that was like for you. I mean, because you started small and grew, and now you have a whole program.
A lot of mentors, it's been a great journey. To your point, we think of Google as this very large company with so many resources, and on some level that's certainly true. But I'll tell you that if you look under the hood, we have all sorts of, you see a great Google product and you learn there's 4 engineers who are behind that. Our team globally, Google for Entrepreneurs, is now about 30 people. And we're distributed among 7 countries, and we work with entrepreneurs in 140 countries. So, and internally we're not even considered very small of a team. So I think in terms of growing up within Google, lots of amazing mentors. An early one was David Drummond, who's one of our senior vice presidents, runs Alphabet, actually hired me, took a chance on me when I had literally 0 experience in corporate securities, had no business working on an IPO. He took a chance on me, has been a tremendous advocate for so many people within Google that learned from his leadership style. Megan Smith was my boss for 6 years, extraordinary visionary woman who never takes no for an answer, never stops thinking about how to connect and grow the pie. She's of course now the CTO at the White House. So incredible to see where she's gone. Chris Sacca was an early mentor who taught me about sort of, it's okay to break glass, right? It's okay to buck convention when it doesn't suit, it's not gonna get the job done. So a lot of different inspirations.
Oh yeah, my mentor, David Dronan, Chris Sacca.
And Melly Price, who I look up to.
I love it. Okay, so I want to talk some specifics about the Google for Entrepreneurs program. I think it's, as I've gotten to know it, it's an amazing resource, and I think a lot of the people in this room would love to know more about the program itself. In particular, you all do entrepreneurship differently than most corporate organizations. Can you share a little bit about, where did it come from? What was its genesis? You spoke a little bit briefly about, but then you've moved into a model that includes building tech hubs and connecting people that way. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that means and what the ultimate goals are for that.
Absolutely. So within our team, we think a lot about how can we leverage Google's resources across the board to be the #1 force in the world supporting entrepreneurs. That's sort of something we talk about just within our team. What kind of resources does Google have? One, definitely we have financial resources we can bring to help support. 2, we have our human capital, so mentorship, training, product education, curricula we can work on. And 3 is probably most important, is we're a product and technology company. So our technology can be that enabler, and I think that makes us unique. Within Google, it's important to understand where we sit, and I love where we sit, which is directly coming out of Google's bottom line. At Google for Entrepreneurs, we don't consider it charitable contributions, not philanthropic work coming out of our foundation, which has its own very, very necessary mandate. It's not coming out of Google Ventures, which is our venture fund specifically focused on financial return, investing for ROI on Google's behalf. And so I think of our work as investing Google's tens of millions of dollars a year, but into communities for the long term, and it's for profit. So we believe that by empowering the next, hopefully hundreds of thousands, eventually millions of startups to be created, come online, use the internet, use the web. Ultimately, yes, they'll use Google products, it will benefit us in the long, long term. Mm-hmm. But we're privileged to not have this immediate sales goal or monetization. 100% of the work we do is at zero cost to entrepreneurs. But that doesn't mean Google doesn't see benefit from it as well. So I think that's a unique part of the structure. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the actual work, what do we actually do? So there's 2 sides to the work. One is, sort of what I call the owned and operated, what we do directly. And the second is the much more scalable work with partners. So part 1 is through a program called Campus. So we run 6 campuses around the world. And the campus is the idea that, we want this to be the central landing pad in a community. On average, they're 30 to 40,000 square foot spaces, completely free and open to the community. We have them in London, Tel Aviv, Madrid, Warsaw, Seoul in South Korea, and we just launched in June in Sao Paulo, Brazil, our first in Latin America. So our goal is to be very, very deeply embedded in a small number of communities where Google has a large presence, so we can lean in. And if you come to a campus, the footprint is the same, sort of the model is the same, but the flavor is very, very hyper-localized. So we always have a public cafe, completely open for anyone to work. You can work there one day, you can work there all day, every day if you want for free. We do have permanent desk space, we do have education space, classroom space. Important to me is we have multiple event spaces where anybody can host an event for the startup community completely for free. Because in cities like London and Seoul, super expensive and really cost prohibitive. So on average, we have 3 to 4 events every day. And then what I'm most excited about is the Google layer. So bringing in certainly our team, but also the rest of Google, of course, to teach classes and mentor and lean in. And so in London last year, for example, we had over 1,200 hours of mentorship by Google employees. And so, having that direct one-on-one interaction. So that's part 1 of the business. And I think in there, because it's our space, we can test creative models and we can fail pretty rapidly and tweak things. So we run a series of programs. 2 really quickly I'll mention that I'm really passionate about. One is called Founders Over 50. And we want to dispel the notion that you have to be 23 in a hoodie to be a founder. That's not true, right? And so we run this program, which is exactly what it sounds like. We bring in more experienced founders and actually find that they are often the best mentors for the younger entrepreneurs, right? But it's been really successful. We'd love to grow it all over the world. And the second is a program called Campus for Moms, which we've been running in all 6 campuses for some time, which is, we realized the insight for us was traditional accelerator model of approximately 3 months, 24/7, does not work. for women with young children, new moms. So we decided to just tweak the model. And Campus for Moms is a 10-week long, baby-friendly startup accelerator where we condense all the curriculum into 1 day per week. You bring your babies with you. We have cry rooms, playrooms, feeding rooms, and we just build everything together. And the results are astounding, right? We're not lowering the bar, we're not diluting anything. We're simply tweaking the environmental factors that set these entrepreneurs up for success. And so being able to experiment like that, and that's the part of the work that we do directly. On the other hand, we work with a number of partners, and I think that's the most exciting part to me, is being able to impact more communities like Austin. So we have 50 partners around the world. They're in about 120 countries. And really just try to back them financially, try to bring our resources to them. And Capital Factory is an amazing example of exactly the type of organization based on mission, based on community, that we love working with.
Gosh, you touched on so many things that are meaningful to me. I see some gray hair in this room. Who wants Founders over 50 in Austin, Texas? All right. Wendy, we can go have drinks and figure out how to do that.
Am I the only one 50 in the room?
Well, what I heard was cry room, and I was like, why is that limited to babies? I think after some of my mentoring
I think we
sessions,
should start
people
one
need
here.
cry
We'll
rooms.
pilot it here.
So you touched on something that this is something that I think is an evolving conversation, and it's a challenging conversation. One of the things I love about what you all are doing is related to your diversity and inclusion efforts. And I've watched you all from afar for a couple of years now really tackle that head on in a way that does not seem selfish. I know that it's in large corporate best interest to develop that talent pool, but you guys have really taken a unique tack. And when I look at the body of programs from Founders Over 50 to all the work you all do to support women in technology and diversity in technology in general, yet your mission is, you're no money, no mission, right? So you're not just this philanthropic, we're out there doing this trying to benefit our brand. You guys are genuinely trying to create change. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen work? This is something that is a constant issue, particularly I think in smaller communities. Austin struggles with this a lot. How do you develop programs that foster diversity and inclusion without doing something you said, without lowering the bar, right? We don't want to be pandering to a least common denominator. We want to rise people up and sort of an all boats rise mentality. So I think you guys are just stellar leaders in that space. I'd love to hear some learning and some sharing from what you've learned all over the world doing this work.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, and we share very similar values in that sense. So I think there's 3 pillars that I'd love to touch on briefly. And one is thinking about diversity front and center in our own teams, right, in the teams that we hire. And I've been very fortunate to get to hire our team completely from scratch. I was the first person. And we've never had to lower the bar. And my team is majority women. Actually, we always joke that we're looking for a few good men, if you know any. But we really, we exercise things like the Rooney Rule, right, which is interviewing, waiting to make sure we're looking at the right pipeline. In all of our markets, we hire hyper locally. And so thinking front and center, you truly don't have to sacrifice quality, to your point. It's simply that we live in a relationships business and a referrals business, and we only see the first few people who come in the door through the people we know. That's definitely one part of it. The other approach for us has been the work that we do in communities, and there's 2 ways that we tackle that problem. And the first is, we want to identify and directly back organizations specifically focused on bringing underrepresented minorities into the community. We passionately believe we don't want to create separate silos and separate networks. We want to bring them all into the existing network that we are all a part of every day, and that create those collision points. So we have a portfolio of about 7 or 8 partners who specifically focus on underrepresented minority entrepreneurs. So groups like Code 2040, Coalition for Queens, Astia Global, they're doing extremely powerful work. We want to help them further their goals, whether that's through financial sponsorship, through mentorship. The Entrepreneur in Residence program that Josh mentioned earlier is a great example of partnering with others to bring diversity into communities, and it's really, really hard. So that's the vertical approach. The approach that I'm even more excited about is the horizontal approach. When I talked about the global partner network we have, is 50 organizations in 125 countries who are world leaders in entrepreneurship. These people have a lot of power, they have a lot of convening power, a lot of ability to influence change. And so we work with them and try to affect change across the board. So when we talk about diversity, I understand that it means different things in every single community, and we have to be very specific on a community by community basis. That's gender, that's ethnicity, that's socioeconomic status, that's age, sexual orientation, you name it. Across the board globally, we know, I'll just use women as an example of a group who's globally underrepresented in entrepreneurship. And you were a part of this as well. Early on, we ran a campaign called 40 Forward. At the time, we only had 40 partners, now we're over 50. We basically put out a call to action where we put forward $1 million and said, in addition to our existing partnership, we want to set a collective goal around the world of increasing representation of women in our communities, in our events, in our accelerators, in our membership base by 25% across the board, around the whole world. Are you in? If you're in, raise your hand, submit a proposal for either a new program, a tweak to an existing program. How are you going to get towards this goal of 25%? So we were excited, so excited to see all 40 communities raise their hand and came forward. And we learned so much from a pilot of 40 different experiments around the world. And so I would say at the end of that year, this was 2014, we saw a net sustained 10% increase in women, female participation across the board, across the networks. And so a few learnings there. Actually, our team is in the process now of figuring out what the 2016 version of this is going to be. So if you have ideas, let us know. But a few quick insights. Things as simple as, one, changing the time of day of events. Sounds super obvious, but it wasn't that obvious, right? If you keep doing only happy hours and dinners, it's not going to work for a lot of the population. Two was, we had this debate, this is a really hot topic, creating specific programs for female entrepreneurs, so women-focused accelerators. I've heard a lot of conversation, we were just having one earlier today about, we don't want to create separate silos, but if women aren't applying at the same rate, it's not that the great entrepreneurial talent doesn't exist, it's they're not coming in through the doors. And so 1871, a partner in Chicago, announced they would be doing a female accelerator. Simply by announcing it, they hadn't even launched it yet, they saw a 25% increase in female membership to 1871 overall. They've run multiple successful cycles, and I've spent a lot of time with women who are part of these female-only accelerator programs, and the feedback that I've heard pretty unanimously is really, really positive. So kind of a convert on that point. The other thing we observed was adapting to cultural norms locally really matters. So an accelerator in Gaza we work with, it's called Gaza Sky Geeks. And they were having a super difficult time getting women to participate, but women are the majority of the population there. And so they learned that it was a cultural value among the families of these women, that they didn't support them coming out, they needed to be working. So their insight was they paid a really small nominal stipend to the women to come to the accelerator. So they were earning income, making money, it was very nominal. They now have majority women in the program, right? And they're sustained. So we're learning all these things, all these tweaks, but I think it's not only is it a global conversation, but the more we can get the leaders like yourselves involved, we're all going to raise the bar across the world.
Well, I'm going to put you in a slightly uncomfortable
You can tell I don't
position
care about that at all, right?
about this. When I said it was an honor to interview Mary, it wasn't said from a sort of, this is a gratuitous, it's an honor. You actually changed my life. When our first dinner together, we were talking, and I hadn't come around yet to this. I wasn't really, I felt like creating women-only accelerators, and I think my quote was, if I have to go to another women's networking event, I'd rather poke my eyes out with a stick. And you really did change my mind about that, because we had a conversation. I'd had a couple glasses of wine, so I think I was a little more receptive to the input. And you said, Melly, we have been privileged enough to have the life experience that we've had to be in these situations where we get to sit on stage and talk to each other and talk about our fantastic lives in the technology industries. And I was, at that point in time, willing to kind of sit back, and you said, I really feel like we have a responsibility to be leaders and to get out and to invite people in. And as I sat with that and I thought about not it wasn't a deliberate thing, it was just an unconsciousness of how unwilling women are to pick up the responsibility to lead. Because it comes with all of the baggage of, well, you don't wanna do it wrong, you don't wanna create silos, you don't wanna, you know, you wanna, it's hard. The bottom line is it's hard. And I have found that as I've put myself out there more year after year to be visible, that it is a self-fulfilling cycle. And so with that, I'm gonna just, I wanted to thank Mary for that influence in my life, because it really has impacted some of the roles that I've picked up in the last couple of years about, okay, I am gonna do this, and I actually probably would have said no, I'm not gonna interview Mary.
Well, thank you so
And I
much
thought,
for saying
I'm gonna-
that, first of all.
I'm gonna
You've
get
done
on stage.
extraordinary things with the last few years. You
And my
really
sweet
have.
daughter is here, and we have a room full of women, and so every woman in this room, I wanna say that find your Mary Grove, or be your Mary Grove, and find a young person or a woman who is ready to make a change in her life, maybe make a leap to becoming an entrepreneur, and just give them that little nudge that says, hey, you know, maybe you don't feel comfortable at Capital Factory, it seems like it's a lot of guys, like help make the leap. Whether it's Capital Factory or any of the amazing accelerator programs we have to reach out to each other, and these programs that you all are supporting are so critical. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous, because I'm like, at this point in my life, you would think I would have figured this out. And I really only recently came to appreciate how important it is to mentor and to put ourselves out there. So
You've done an amazing job with that, and I thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredibly kind. And I think to echo on your plea, the one plea that I have for everyone is always, please don't be so hard on people and organizations who try to experiment with these things. We were talking about, we had a debate earlier about starting a female-focused accelerator, and very robust conversation. And it was like, well, you're gonna get a lot of negative PR and backlash because it's such a polarizing topic. And it is. I've personally been, I mean, there's so much backlash to a lot of the work that we've done. So we need to all embrace and realize, even if things fail, it's worth trying.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, we find out maybe it wasn't the right model, maybe it is. And so I think a lot of us are afraid of the backlash of doing things that are not gonna be well received, and knowing that it's coming from a good place, and ultimately, until that needle moves, we still have to keep moving forward.
yeah, and how do we catalyze it? Because, you know, I've been at Capital Factory for 7 years. I know that the heart of this place would include any woman ready to stand up, or any person of any race, color, you know, whatever you want. And yet they don't show up at the doors, banging down the doors saying, I'm here to participate. And so given that that's a truth, how do we catalyze it and just change the conversation, put programs out there and try and fail. And you guys are doing a great job of leading by example and setting the bar for some of the percentages. Part of it is we just don't know. Like, what is progress? We went from 10% to 12%. You know, is incremental change good enough, or is it, I'm gonna hide I went from 10 to 12, which is a huge increase, but if it's not 50%, I'm still a failure. So having those conversations, it's a slightly awkward conversation to have, but I think it's an important one. So in the time we have to wrap up here, I think that's a great segue into sort of, you know, you've traveled the world over, you work for an organization that is truly global. What are your thoughts about kind of trends? The other piece, which personally I just, you know, I have a 5.5-year-old daughter, and I didn't have a 5.5-year-old daughter 5.5 years ago. And so, and my lens on the world and what I wanted to leave in it was very different. And as you're thinking about, not thinking about, you can't be half pregnant, so you're fully pregnant.
I'm halfway there.
You're halfway there. What do you think about leaving, you know, in the world for your children, and what trends are you seeing? What things really get you excited about what's happening in this ecosystem?
Those are amazing questions, amazing questions. So I think in terms of trends, so many things. One, I'm really excited that, you know, the markets are truly global. The opportunities that we all have as entrepreneurs have never been more global, right? I think the internet has completely democratized access to entrepreneurship on both sides of the equation. So who has access to becoming an entrepreneur, and then when you launch a company, your audience can be global from day one. And the number one thing that that I coach entrepreneurs is please build for a global audience from day one. You know, if you're in France and you're building for an 80 million person market, that sounds large, but it's not large enough. And the most successful entrepreneurs we see are doing that from day one. Take advantage of global connections. With Google for Entrepreneurs, we have a global passport, right? If you're a member of Capital Factory, and if you're not, you should be, you can work for free from any of our 36 campus spaces or partner spaces around the world. So you want to enter the market in London, you want to enter the mobile market in Seoul, go work there for free. Take advantage of that. That's number one. Number two, I think, is the world is dramatically changing, right? Has changed already. And so that tipping point is already here. We talk so much about, even at Google, we used to talk about optimizing our products for mobile. This was a conversation 7, 8 years ago. Now, companies are talking about mobile first, but I think really we're actually in a mobile only world if we look at the next billion, the next 2 or 3 billion people coming online. An interesting stat I heard recently is that by the year 2020, 90% of people over age 6 will have a mobile phone or access to one. That's insane to me, right? I got my first cell phone at age.
My daughter's here, I think it's after age 12.
Age 12 for Sophie. But I think I had my first cell phone at age 18 or something, right? So from an entrepreneur standpoint, you know, capitalizing on that, building for mobile, building for those environments from day one, your market is massive. Even if you're here in Austin, think about all of the people in the emerging markets who could use your product from day one. Similarly, the population makeup has changed. 50% of the world is under age 35. Most of the emerging markets, that number is much, much, much higher. So who are you designing for? And what's that opportunity? So I'm really excited about that direction. And then I think one thing that I continue to observe is the importance of physical space and connecting offline like we are today. No matter how connected our world is, nothing can replace these offline connections. And so we've been really passionate about convening people in physical spaces, the rise of co-working globally, of these amazing tech hubs, which are about so much more than just space. But I think that trend is here to stay, it's not going away. And why would you work from home when you can work amongst a community? Mm-hmm. You know, Google was really built in a garage 20 years ago, and that was a very Silicon Valley dream, is let's go build a company in a garage. Today, I believe that companies are born among communities like Capital Factory and these amazing spaces. And so I'm excited about that.
It's evolution. People realize working out of a garage sucks.
It does, it sucks. Ventilation's not good.
Yeah.
It's 110 outside. But I think in terms of looking at the future, you know, my big inspiration was my parents. My parents were immigrants from Thailand, and they came from almost nothing and came here really in search of that quintessential American dream. They were entrepreneurs, ran small businesses together for over 30 years, and sort of instilled in me that belief that, you know, you can grab your life by the reins and you can create that. And now it is such an extraordinary privilege to do this work. As Melly was alluding, I'm having twins in December, and so we're thinking about, you know, what world do we want to help create for them, and what opportunities will the next generation have that I don't even get to have. And the world is transforming so rapidly. So I think very much that entrepreneurship is that common theme, and I really believe that all of the world's greatest challenges, we were talking earlier about healthcare, right? I mean, transportation, energy, clean water, you name it. I really believe that the solutions lie amongst the entrepreneurs. That's where the rapid innovation is happening. So if I could do one thing for the rest of my life, it would be to continue to invest in all forms of support for entrepreneurs, but bringing in the most inclusive communities. I want my children to be able to see and believe that anything is possible, and I don't know how you look or, you know, what you come from, opportunities are endless.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear that, baby girl? Anything is possible. It's so true. Well, Mary, those are great words. Let's open it up for a couple questions from the audience. I think we have time for about 2 or 3 questions. Anybody have a burning desire to ask Mary Grove a question?
Sorry to ask this, but how do you join Google Entrepreneur? I mean, what's the path to entry?
Sure, so how do you join Google for Entrepreneurs is the question. In general, all of our programs are completely open, so google.com/entrepreneurs is where you can learn about all of them, but there's 2 ways to get involved. One, the easiest is if you're in a country where we have a campus, or you visit a country where we have a campus, please physically come in the doors and spend time with us. But the second is, we really focus on the communities where we have partnerships. And so for folks in Austin, the answer is a lot easier than it is for folks in, you know, Ulaanbaatar, for example. But we always try to figure out who is that home base locally we can support. And I would say if you're in Austin, please come to Capital Factory and give us collectively your feedback on the types of programs, education you would like to see us bring. We're always gonna try to lean forward and help. So, you know, if we keep hearing that people here are really interested in VR, for example, we wanna go back home to Google now and figure out how can we plug in from an education perspective, get the right teams to come here to Austin and work with you guys. So giving us that feedback would be great.
Mhm. I think you guys have really hit a sweet spot. If you go to the Google website that has all the programs listed, you'll really see that they've focused on convening partners and groups of people and different expertise more than doing it individually. And I think that's such that's a place where only Google can really play to connect. So I think that strategy's super valuable, and certainly Capital Factory has programs running, you know, year round that you can come to meetups, and you can come to get to know people in the community generally. But part of being in the Tech Hub network is that you can go to, if you're a member at Capital Factory, you can actually go to other tech hubs. So there's reciprocity between the tech hubs to enable that connection between communities as well as another place. Any last questions? Well, we've got one in the back.
Yes. How do you become a partner? You have organizations
Sure, how do you become a partner? The woman in charge is standing in the back. Her name is Jenna McKeel. But just to give you a little more.
An amazing woman in her own right.
Yes, she runs partnerships for us. But to give you a little bit of commentary on what we look for in partners. And we only, we have 50 right now around the world, and that's partly by design, because we run it as a true network and a true community. To Melly's reference earlier, we get together throughout the year, we run programs across the whole network, so we really are trying to keep that a tight-knit community. We look for a few things. One is an organization who has a like-minded mission that's very community-first, community-focused, entrepreneur-centric. Two, we look for groups who have a strong track record of execution. So generally, we're not the first money in, unless they're addressing a cause that hasn't been addressed before. So what's your track record? Are we driving towards the same metrics? On our team, we're looking to drive jobs created and funding raised, real economic development by these entrepreneurs, not for Google to take credit for them to take credit for, but really, are we driving towards the same things? And then the last criteria I would say is, what is Google's local geographic footprint? Us not having an office locally there doesn't preclude us from working with you, but it does make it much more difficult, right? It's a natural fit for us to be able to rely on. Many of you may know Gerardo in the back, who's an amazing Googler here in Austin, but it's folks like Gerardo in our cities where we have partnerships who can really lean in and draw in and bring the best of Google to that partnership. So those are roughly the four things.
Super. Awesome, one last question.
Do you have any special programs to work with students?
Yes, students. So it's interesting. We've piloted a few things. We've got for example, a partnership in London with a group called Entrepreneur First. They have a 5th year, essentially it's your 5th year of college, and you actually get a stipend to build a startup. Mm-hmm. That's super cool. Lemonade Day is another nonprofit in the US teaching kids entrepreneurship through the lemonade stand. But I would say at this exact moment, we found the universe is so large in which we want to have an impact. We've actually started coming back to laser focus, which is startups, tech startups and entrepreneurs at the moment. So we're always open to conversations, but at the moment we realize just going for high growth tech startups, we're still not making a dent in the universe that we want to.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming out, Mary. Thank you
such a pleasure.
for
Thank you
spending
so
your
very
afternoon
much.
here, and thank you for your support of our program here. You guys really do make a difference.
You're doing amazing things, and if I could just, one last parting thought is, throughout the world, the world over when I'm on the road, people know about Austin, people are intrigued by Austin, people care about Austin. Austin is very much on the map as a very hot tech scene. So congratulations on all the great work, and it's really an honor for us to be working with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
member at Technical Factory, and I'm a member of
Okay, yeah, because I would have just
Look at that.
there's a bunch of access to papers. When you remember like a passport or employment or out of other spaces. If you go to google.com we have you can see a list of all of the programs that they have, and some of it comes here like there's a well we call it winning users. We're doing a limited technology no it's limited technology.
And if they're linked to the international accelerator, I discovered that there is an international accelerator. That's where I'm going nowadays.
You know, which one?
Angel